are few things people hold more dear or defend more fiercely than their own opinions. But do you really know where your opinions come from? At the turn of the 20th century, a man named Edward Bernays figured out a way to influence people without them even being fully aware of it. And since then, public opinion has exploded into a multi-billion-dollar business, one that even governments around the world have a stake in. Joining us to discuss more about the forces that subconsciously shape our perspective is University of Toronto psychiatry professor Mark Leith. Thank you for being here today.
Pleasure.
This is fascinating. Is it fair to call it a science?
I think psychoanalysis is considered by some people a science, and other people, they're not so sure.
All right, people like to think, hey, I know what I think, I know where those thoughts come from. But Edward Bernays has been given credit for the reason that many Canadians eat bacon in the morning. It's the reason that women smoke cigarettes. Walk us through some of these examples. How did Edward Bernays' teachings and thought process influence those decisions?
Well, you can watch Edward Bernays, because he lived to over 100 years, on David Letterman on YouTube in the 1990s. And when he was brought on, he referred to himself as a doctor. He said he was Dr. Bernays. So Letterman asked him, well, what type of a doctor are you? And he said, well, nothing really. It's just that more people will believe me. So he used the expert, the 9 out of 10 dentists, to promote bacon. So he had doctors say, although people were at that time eating a light, healthy breakfast, which we're now trying to return to, but he got doctors to say, we need a hearty breakfast. So that became bacon and eggs. So bacon and eggs comes from Edward Bernays.
He wraps this sort of idea of perception and he turns it on its head. And the one that fascinates me the most is this idea of, taking cigarettes as being something dirty and unladylike and turning it into this symbol of female empowerment. Walk us through how he did that. Who hired him, first of all? He
was hired by the Lucky Strike Company. And it's interesting after the Women's March to think about that, because he sold smoking as a feminist issue, as the right of women to smoke. And he called his campaign Torches of Freedom. The reason he called it Torches of Freedom is in psychoanalysis there's something called phallic, or that the cigarette actually looks like an erect penis, which we can now say on TV. So he got secretaries and debutantes to march down the streets of New York, and then on cue they all lit up. And when that happened, all the press around the world took note, and so it broke the taboo of women smoking, particularly in public, and now we have women smoking as well as
and
men.
You saw it in movies, Hollywood starlets picked it up. When we transfer this thought process to politics, and his work, although it started out with companies and trying to gain a profit, it took a bit of a darker turn. Walk us through that period.
Well, one of his other clients was the United Fruit Company. And they created the term Banana Republic. They owned properties where they grew bananas in the Caribbean. And one country was Guatemala. And they elected a leader who wanted to nationalize, who wanted to buy the banana, not take them over, wanted to buy them, but wanted them for local use because they were the local bananas. So Bernays created an invasion of Guatemala on behalf of the United States. And the way he sold that was he claimed that the leader, which was not true, was part of the communist conspiracy. So he then worked with the press. He had lots of contacts, of course, with the press in the media, who claimed that he was a communist leader, and that was dangerous to the security of the United States. And so they invaded and took over the bananas.
We can apply this now to the world of politics, where politicians can put themselves out there as a product that needs to be believed in, so that that can translate into votes. How does this school of thought translate into the world of politics? What kinds of things do we see? I mean, movies have been made about this.
Well, one of Freud's major insights is that we're primates. Our closest cousins are the chimpanzees. So our reasoning is more based on the middle part of the brain, not the cortex, which we think of as logical. And in the middle part of the brain are the emotions, but it's also the instinct. So xenophobia, the fear of the other, which gets exploited by Hitler, gets exploited by lots of leaders, and now, of course, Trump, is based on the idea that we're instinctually parts of groups and we fear the others. And human males are programmed to kill the other group, hence the psychology behind war. So xenophobia is extremely easy to sell in political campaigns.
Because it's based on an emotion.
It's based on an instinct. That's what I'm getting at. It's based on an instinct, not an emotion.
All right. This is such a fascinating field of study, and we could talk longer, but we are out of time. And that is not an alternative fact. That's very true.